I think I've unmuted myself. Good morning, Fred. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, you and your team. I appreciate it. This is a very interesting time that we are in. I think for a lot of us, this time has highlighted some of the things that most of us already knew, right? We already have been aware for some time that race and racial inequality has played a huge part in how our communities are evolving or not evolving, surviving, but not thriving. All of the things that I think many of us have had conversations about in our work, right, in our professional lives, but also personally, right? Those of us who have families here, those of us who have children and grandchildren, I am one of those people. I have children and grandchildren, and they fuel my passion for this work. And they fuel my passion for this work because although we have somehow fooled ourselves into believing that we are in a much better place than we were 60 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. If you really look at where we are as a whole, as the Black community, we are not that far ahead. I pay a lot of attention to the policies and systems that basically pull the strings of every single aspect of our lives, from education to housing, to the criminal justice system, to the healthcare system, and beyond. We have been impacted by policies and systems that were enacted forever ago, when the Republic of the United States was originally created, right? Those policies and systems, many of them still exist in the fabric of everyday systems and policies that we must navigate. As the executive director of Circles, it is important for me to pay attention to those policies and systems and to study them and to try to make the connection for how they are still impacting the people that I am attempting to serve. And it's really difficult. It's really difficult to do the work. And, you know, for those of you that know me, you know that I'm a very transparent, open person. Some of my colleagues would think that I am sometimes too transparent and too open, but I don't believe there's a such thing, especially in the work that we are doing. I am a product of very deep generational poverty. I was born into very deep poverty, have suffered through homelessness and hunger and every other symptom of poverty that you can think of. And my own personal trauma and experiences surviving poverty in this country have led me and fueled me to this work, and is what really keeps me waking up every day and continuing to do it. But when I was living in my own trauma, I had no idea about policies and systems, no clue how they actually worked and how they touched every aspect of my life, how they impacted my education, how they impacted the housing and the substandard housing that I have lived in, how, you know, the lack of housing, living in foster care and on the streets, being involved, finding my own way into the criminal justice system, being hungry for days at a time, having to worry about how to feed my children. When you are in the midst of that type of oppression, you don't always make the connection that there are policies and systems that dictate every piece of that. And so now, as a director of an organization and as a person who has been working in the nonprofit sector for some time, specifically focused on housing and homeownership opportunities for low-income families, primarily Black low-income families. You have to really understand all of the work, all of the intentionality that has gone into making sure that Black folks stay out of the game. right? It's really important that you understand that, because if you don't understand it, as both the folks who are in the trauma and who are working and doing everything they can to work themselves out of poverty and into self-sufficiency, as well as practitioners who are trying to develop the work and lead the work. If you don't understand the connection, if we are not educating ourselves and the folks who we are trying to serve about these systems and policies, the redlining, the intentional segregation, the burning down of Wall Street or Black Wall Street, the disasters that have happened, the tragedy, the pain that has been inflicted on people, if you don't get that, then what ends up happening is people like me, people who grew up in this environment, people who want more but don't know how to get more, they start to internalize. We internalize this as it's our fault. We've done something wrong. We haven't done enough. And this society, somehow, we have been trained to believe that anyone who's living in poverty, anyone who is locked away in an unjust criminal justice system, children who are not being properly educated, sick people with health disparities, we tend to point the finger of blame at the victims of these systems and policies. And it works in a way that you tend to believe that all of these things that are happening to you because you've done something. You've done something to deserve it, or you haven't done something enough. You haven't worked hard enough. You're not smart enough. You haven't done something. And the more you internalize that, the easier it is for you not to be able to identify opportunity when it is presented to you. So imagine, you guys, most of you are all practitioners in the work on this call. How many conversations have you had with your team, with yourself and your strategic planning, where you say, well, we've done this and we have these workshops and we put these programs in these communities, but people just don't come. They just don't want it bad enough. They don't want to come. They're content living in poverty. I've been at tables where I've actually heard people say that. And I believe that is coming from this space of not understanding our history in this country. We do not understand, we have not made the connection that these policies and systems have been intentionally created to keep a certain demographic of people poor, unhoused, and without assets. And until we make that connection, until we start to educate ourselves and the constituents that we serve, and the communities that we serve, and the children that we serve, we have to educate them about our history so that we can alleviate some of that shame and guilt that they feel, that society has taught them that they should feel because they haven't done enough. So housing is very important to me. Helping Black families in Pittsburgh develop homeownership and become homeowners so that they can develop legacy wealth and generational wealth is very important to me. Same for our entrepreneurship programming. Creating opportunities for poor Black families to become entrepreneurs and create a legacy, not only for their families, but for their community. It is at the core of what we are doing. But it is very difficult to have families reach out for that opportunity if they don't believe it's for them, right? If it's not for me. I haven't seen anybody benefit from it. I haven't been the benefactor of it myself. So it makes it really difficult for me to see how I fit into this. And part of that comes from the systemic, the policies and the systems. And basically what it boils down to is this industry of white supremacy that touches every single aspect of our lives. So how do we circumvent that? Well, first we start telling the truth, right? We have to tell the truth. We have to be honest. It's an uncomfortable conversation. And I know how hard it is to have the conversation because we have them every day. We have them every day. We speak to the folks who volunteer in our program who are almost all white. We have a lot of white folks who are reaching out to us, who want to do something, who have good intentions, who want to serve, who want to share their valuable social capital, right? But we have to educate them as well as our participants in our program about our history of racial inequality. We have to discuss implicit bias. We have to talk about how all of these things impact how we view our communities, how we view ourselves. What is our perception of self? I'll tell you that one of the things that I was being told as I was trying to work myself out of poverty, I had to get a degree. You have to go to college. You have to go to college and you're going to have to get a degree. But what was really interesting is nobody talked about how I was going to pay for it, right? I didn't have the benefit of my mother being able to refinance her mortgage and pay for my education because she never was a homeowner. So if I and many, many people like me wanted to take advantage of that opportunity of higher education, I had to go in debt, and lots of debt. And people don't talk to you about how that debt impacts you for the bulk of your adult life. They don't explain to you that that debt is going to impact your ability to build assets through home ownership, right? They don't talk about how that debt is used to determine your debt ratio when you apply for a mortgage, right? They don't talk about these things. And so when people fail to either get the higher education or they quote unquote fail to become a homeowner, we look at them differently. We look at them, their value is determined differently, right? And nobody really wants to admit it, but if you ask any politician who they're stomping at, what space, where are they going to campaign first, they most likely are going to campaign to homeowners, people who they consider stakeholders in a community. You can use homeownership as an asset to borrow from, to send your children to college, or to get expensive medical attention. So all of these things matter in a way that a lot of us haven't been taught they matter, right? And the way that we are kept out of it is, it's not like you're going to walk into a bank in a lot of cases and somebody's going to say, sorry, you're not going to get this loan because you're Black. That's not how it works. The policies, though, the policies of banking, the policies of homeownership, the policies of insurance, all of these things impact Black and brown people in a very different way than they impact white folks. So until we're able to acknowledge that these things exist, we're going to keep laying the blame on the victim, the folks who can't get into the door of a homeownership, the folks who can't walk into a bank and borrow money to start a business, right? Folks who can't get capital to start a business or keep their businesses running. And these are all things that we are dealing with right now that are so prevalent. The entrepreneurship piece right now, the lack of access to capital during this virus is impacting Black people more than any other group of people, particularly Black women. These are all things that are sort of the fabric, though, of the banking industry, the fabric of all of these places. Education, we're all scrambling right now trying to figure out how to get distance learning equipment to children. These are all laced into the fabric of the educational system, right? If we go to Mount Lebanon today, I would be willing to bet that Mount Lebanon had a very fast solution to making sure that their children got distance learning. I know Fox Chapel did, right? Are the largest, poorest school district in the city is still struggling to make sure that all of our children are having proper distance learning. And that is all, it's easy for us to look and say it's PPS's fault. Well, we have to go deeper than that. We have to talk about the system of education and its foundation that really was built on what? Black people weren't going to school or even able to send their children to school when the school systems were first built. hospital systems. We weren't allowed to walk into a hospital and get care, right? Black and brown people are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system. All of these things that we know that they exist. But I was just reading just over the weekend that in 2016, the Pew Research Center did a survey around whether or not Black people needed systems and policy change to make this racial inequality change. 70% of white people do not believe that any systems or policies need to be changed. 70%. These are the people who are sitting at tables and who have the power to make changes, but who won't because they don't believe that changes are needed. So, you know, I don't know what the answers are, right? I don't have the answers, probably like most of us don't have the answers. But the one thing that I know we must do, and we must do very, very soon, and we must be very intentional about it, is telling the truth of the history of this country, telling the truth about what this country was built on, and what every single policy, every single institution that we are all impacted by every single day has been just dirtied and muddied by white supremacy. There is absolutely no way that we can continue to deny it, right? So acknowledging it is one thing. Finding solutions for it is something else. But I do believe that the solutions come after the acknowledgement, right? You can't find solutions for things that won't be acknowledged. So what we will continue to do at Circles Greater Pittsburgh is we will continue to offer our services and the programming and the support that we offer to our families with a core of understanding how white supremacy and how racial inequality has impacted the most important parts of their lives. And you can't talk about improving people's lives, and particularly as it comes to poverty, without addressing the psychological and emotional impact of poverty. There is a huge impact that goes completely unnoticed and untalked about. And I have been researching this for a very long time, mainly for my own healing. The psychology of poverty training that I offer in my consulting business has been developed from my own personal experiences. I don't ever, say that I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a sociologist, I am not any professional expert. I am an expert of my own experiences. I am an expert of observation. I am an expert of making a connection between my trauma that I know exists and that I am still healing from, and the things that I see in the people that I serve every single day. And what I have learned over that time, and how I have begun to heal from my own things enough to escape the weight of poverty, is recognizing that poverty is not just about a person's financial condition. The psychological and emotional condition that happens from exposure to long-term poverty is way more powerful than the financial. It's way more powerful because money is not going to heal that trauma. It is not. Years and years and generations of abuse, of neglect, and hindrance of opportunity is draining on the psyche and on the heart and souls and spirits of people. And if we are not including that aspect into the programs that we develop, into the way that we facilitate our work, we are wasting our time, we are wasting our resources. We must include the emotional and psychological trauma. We have to figure out how to overcome that and how to help people heal from that. So that is the work that we will continue to do. As long as I am the director of Circles Greater Pittsburgh, that will be the core of everything that we ever offer for families in Allegheny County. Thank you. I think I did it. I think I stayed within my 20 minutes.
You did. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tammy, for sharing. I see a lot of comments coming into the chat. So I do invite you to put any questions that you have for Tammy into the chat. Okay. So the first question I have here in the chat is, what are your thoughts on potential reparations to push for, and who can and should be held responsible?
That's a great question. I am currently reading a book about that as we speak, sitting right here next to it. It is called From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. It is a book written by William A. Darity Jr. and A. Kirsten Mullen. It is a very, very good book, very good insight into history, very good insight and suggestions for what we could be doing to move closer to reparations. I, for one, am a huge proponent of reparations. I believe, actually, you know, it's very odd to me that reparations we've done reparations before, even in this country. We just didn't do it for Black people, but we did do it for Japanese Americans who were wrongfully jailed during World War II. They received reparations for the injustices that they suffered. The Canadian government has provided reparations for the Indigenous folks that they misplaced or displaced and abused, and had their families separated because and sent to Christian-run programs just because they were Indigenous people in Canada. The Germans provided provisions of reparations for the cruelty that they bestowed upon Jewish people in Germany. So everyone, I mean, you know, many people have received a form of reparations for acknowledged injustices, except for Black people. We are long overdue for reparations. And honestly, I don't believe there's any other way to rectify the inequality in wealth in this country without an intentional reparation plan. I don't know what it should look like. I do believe that assets and providing assets is a way, and by assets, I mean land and homes, is a good start. But it hasn't happened, you know, and it's really odd considering that these are government sanctioned injustices. So the second answer I have to that question is who should be held responsible. I believe our federal government is responsible. I believe that should trickle down into our local government. But, you know, our federal government sanctioned these injustices. So why should they not be the ones who rectify it by providing reparations?
Great. Thank you. We do have another question here in the chat. It is no surprise that many employed in nonprofits are still considered low income. How do we as nonprofits address this elephant in the room, poverty within our own organizations?
Yeah, that is, it's a problem, right? It's a problem, just like with many other jobs in the city. Many people who are not earning a livable wage in this city. But as far as the nonprofit sector goes, we have to really be intentional about that. If you think about most of the nonprofit sector jobs are almost always dealing with other people in poverty, right? Most of the folks on the other side of the desk or the table in the nonprofit sector are people that we are trying to help improve their lives in some way. And in most of those ways, it's a financial improvement, right? We're trying to help them resolve some type of issue that primarily is a symptom of some type of poverty or low income. How can we have people who are doing that work, sitting across from people, trying to help other people in poverty if they themselves are in poverty. If they themselves can't even focus on their own work for worrying about whether or not their lights are being cut off, or their rent is not paid, or their medical costs are not covered, their child care, they have to worry about their child care so that they can be at work facing other people who are in the same situation. It's a conflict of interest as far as I'm concerned. I think we have to do everything that we can, everything in our power to try to rectify that, because it's not right. We have to find a way to pay a livable wage to the folks that are serving the community. So yes, I do think it's an issue, and I think it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be intentionally addressed. How do we do it? I don't know, right? I think one way is our foundation community, some of which I have seen personally, have changed their stance on funding operations. I think we have to make it a standard that operations are something that we can apply and submit proposals of funding for.
Thanks, Tammy. We do have time for just a couple more questions, so feel free to put another one in the chat. Tammy, how can the groups on the call and additional nonprofits collaborate with your organization? What are some things that you look for in collaboration as well?
So the very first thing that I look for is alignment of mission. Alignment of mission is really important to me. Alignment of values is very important to me. We do not do collaboration for the sake of collaboration. We are a small shop. We have a limited capacity. So I'm very particular about who we partner and collaborate with, because when we partner and collaborate, and when we're looking for partners in collaboration, we are looking to increase our capacity, right? That is our ultimate goal, is to collaborate to increase capacity. And that won't happen if you are collaborating with people who do not share similar values and missions and goals. So we are very, very intentional about partnering with folks who we feel there is a shared alignment of values, because we know that collaboration will increase our capacity, and we can get a lot more work done. That's what we are always looking for. So, and that doesn't mean that if an organization isn't aligned with us, that we can't find ways to work. But in terms of being very collaborative and building strong networks of partnership, I think it's a must that we're looking for other organizations with that shared value system. And so if an organization wants to know if they are aligned in that way with us, I'm always open to conversation. I'm always open to sharing more about what it is that we do and why we do it. And I'm always 100% open to hearing more about our brothers and sisters in the city who are in the fight as well. Just because we are not mission aligned doesn't mean that we're not value aligned. And sometimes value alignment is enough. So always having the conversation is really important.
Thank you. All right, we have one final question, and again, you can still submit your questions, and we'll answer them over the next week. So don't feel as though you can't submit them. All right, Tammy, this final question says, you mentioned needing to talk about the system of education. Would you say we need more systems thinking, systems mapping, and community leadership work to include roundtable discussions? And is there already a forum for doing these activities in Pittsburgh?
Let me see how I can answer this without being offensive. I don't want to do. Honestly, I don't, talking and mapping, and I think we're beyond that. We're beyond the talking and the mapping at this point. We know what the issues are, right? I think we've been talking about this. I am now a second generation parent of the public school system, right? I raised all of my children in Pittsburgh public schools. I am now raising a granddaughter who is in Pittsburgh public schools. We've been talking for 2 generations. we as the parents, we know what the issues are, right? We know where our children are not getting what they need. I honestly don't know the answer to that. This is the one space I think that I am the most frustrated, because we've been talking and mapping and planning and sitting at tables and building coalitions and forums for as long as I can remember. And we are still dealing with the exact same issues. So until somebody is ready to talk about the true issue that our children and our families are facing in the public school system, which I believe is internal racism, and white supremacy, and also the foundation of racism and the building of the institution of education, then I don't know what else there is to talk about. I would really, really love to actually see some of the conversations and the planning and the great work. And there's many, many people who are doing great work around education, but somehow we have not been able to penetrate the institution itself, which is housing, and at the foundation of it is racism. I haven't heard anybody really willing to have that conversation. So until that actually happens, I don't really know what else we could talk about to really make some movement. And that's just my opinion. That is based on my experience as a parent in the system, and as a grandparent, and now as a practitioner trying to guide other parents. Nothing has really changed for me over the last 30 years of my children being in PPS.